My parents accused me of making my sister feel like a failure just because I bought a condo at 26, something I'd worked for my entire life. When they took me to court to try and force me to give my sister her share of my property, they had no idea I was the only one who knew about the secret account that would ruin them. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was running a 102-degree fever and had just logged off from a 12-hour workday, my head pounding in time with the radiator's hiss. I was surviving on lukewarm tea and sheer willpower, curled up on the single armchair in my tiny studio apartment. It was the apartment I'd lived in for 4 years, saving every spare dollar. My lungs ached, a deep, rattling cough reminding me that I was pushing myself too hard. But the market was volatile, and as a junior analyst, taking a sick day wasn't really in my vocabulary if I wanted to get ahead. My phone buzzed on the floor, the screen lighting up with a picture of my mother, Meredith. I smiled, a genuine, tired smile. A call from Mom was probably just what I needed. I swiped to answer, my voice scratchy. "Hi, Mom." "Alexandra, you need to stop this," she said. "No hello, no how are you." Just that familiar, clipped tone of immediate disapproval. "Stop, what? Mom, I'm not feeling well, This whole condo thing, you're being selfish and you're hurting your sister. You know how sensitive she is." The warmth I'd felt a second ago vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp spike of confusion. I had just closed on a small, one-bedroom condo in a decent part of the city. It was my crowning achievement, the culmination of a decade of relentless work. I had started working at a diner at 16, juggled 3 jobs through college to graduate debt-free, and clawed my way into a competitive finance program. I hadn't even moved in yet. The closing papers were still in a manila envelope on my kitchenette counter. "What are you talking about?" I coughed, the effort sending a jolt of pain through my chest. "I bought a place. How does that hurt Clara?" "She's devastated, Alexandra, that's how." My mother's voice rose, sharp and indignant. "She came over here in tears. You parading your big success around is making her feel like a complete and total failure. She's an artist, she has a different path. You, with your spreadsheets and your numbers, you wouldn't understand that." I sat up, the room spinning. "Parading? Mom, I sent one text to the family chat. I haven't even told my friends yet. I just wanted to share the good news." "Well, your good news has consequences," she snapped. "Your father and I were just discussing it. It's not fair." A chilling dread, heavier than the flu, began to settle in my stomach. What's not fair? That you have this asset, and Clara has nothing. She's struggling. She needs support. We give her what we can, but your father is nearing retirement. We thought, well, we expect you to do the right thing. I was completely lost. The fever was making it hard to track her logic. "Mom, what right thing? What are you asking me for?" There was a pause, and then I heard my father, Richard, clear his throat in the background. His voice came on the line, calm and authoritative. He was a senior partner at an accounting firm. He was used to giving orders. "Alexandra," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Your mother is right. This purchase was impulsive and inconsiderate. We've spoken with Clara, and we've decided on a fair solution. We need you to add Clara's name to the deed of your new condo." I stopped breathing. The only sound in the tiny apartment was the ticking clock on the wall. "What?" "It's the only equitable solution," he continued, as if explaining a simple tax deduction. "You'll have a co-owner, and she'll have the security of an asset. It will level the playing field. She can live there with you, or you can buy out her half when you're able. We can draw up the papers." I was too stunned to be angry. I was too sick to yell. All I felt was a profound, hollowing sense of betrayal. They weren't congratulating me. They were confiscating my life's work. "No," I whispered. My voice was weak, but the word was absolute. "What did you say?" My father's voice hardened. "No," I said again, louder this time, though it sent me into another racking cough. I will not be doing that. It's my condo. I paid for it. I worked for it. Clara did nothing. You ungrateful, my mother started, but my father cut her off. I see, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You're going to be difficult. You always were, so focused on yourself. Fine. If you won't be reasonable, Alexandra, we'll make you be reasonable. You've forgotten who you're dealing with. The line went D. I sat in the dark, the phone in my hand, my body shaking from fever and a sudden terrifying clarity. They weren't just jealous. They were serious. I looked at the manila envelope, at the keys sitting on top of it. I had worked 3 jobs since I was 16, paid my own way through college, and bought a condo at 26 all by myself. And my family, the people who were supposed to be proudest of me, were about to declare war. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The next 3 days were a blur of illness and anxiety. The fever finally broke, leaving me exhausted but lucid. My phone remained silent. No follow-up calls. No, are you feeling better? Texts. No, sorry, we were upset, let's talk. Just a cold, heavy silence that felt more threatening than any argument. My family operated on a system of unspoken rules, and I had just broken the cardinal one. Everything revolves around Clara. My sister, Clara, was 24 years old. While I was color-coding my college textbooks and working weekends at a catering company, she was finding herself. Her art consisted of abstract-looking canvases that she never sold, funded entirely by my parents. They paid for her loft-style apartment downtown, which she just lost after deciding the vibe was wrong, her expensive art supplies, her car, and her twice-weekly networking dinners. I loved my sister, I truly did. But the person my parents described as sensitive and devastated was not the person I knew. The Clara I knew was a master of emotional manipulation, capable of producing tears on command to get what she wanted. And what she wanted, always, was what I had. I finally felt well enough to drive, so I bundled up and went to my parents' house. I needed to see their faces. I needed to believe this was all a horrible, fever-induced misunderstanding. I used my old key to let myself in. The house was quiet. My mother, Meredith, was in the kitchen, meticulously arranging little felt gnomes for her Etsy shop. She looked up when I walked in, and her face, usually so warm when she saw me, hardened into a mask of polite indifference. "Oh, Alexandra, you're here." "Mom, I've been sick. I had the flu." "We've been busy," she said, not looking up from her gnome. "Clara's been very distressed. Your father had to take her to the spa yesterday just to calm her down." The casual cruelty of it, the utter lack of concern for my health, hit me harder than the initial phone call. "Mom, what is going on? You can't be serious about the condo. You can't." "Your father and I are very serious," she said, snipping a thread with unnecessary force. "We gave you a good home. We fed you, we clothed you. The fact that you're hoarding your success like this, it's just ugly, Alexandra. We raised you to share." "Share what I earn," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "I shared a room with Clara for 16 years. I shared my clothes. I shared my car when I got one. I'm not sharing my home. The home I bought with my own money, money you never contributed to." "Don't you take that tone with me," she snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold. "You always had a mean streak, always so competitive with your sister." "I'm not competitive," I cried. "I'm just existing. I'm living my life. Why is my success a personal attack on her?" "Because you know she's not as durable as you are," Meredith said, and the word felt like a slap. "She needs help. You've always been the strong one, Alexandra. It's your job to take care of her." "That's your job, Mom." We were interrupted by the sound of the front door. My father and Clara walked in, laughing about something. They both stopped dead when they saw me. Clara, looking perfectly healthy and relaxed from her spa day, immediately ducked behind my father, her eyes wide with manufactured fear, as if I were a threat. "Alexandra," my father said, stepping in front of Clara protectively. "I'm surprised to see you here. I thought I made our position clear." "You did," I said, my hands clenched into fists. "I'm here to make mine clear. It's not happening. You are not touching my condo. You are not getting your name on my deed. This is insane." Clara peeked around his shoulder. "Why are you yelling, Alex? You're scaring me. You're just being so capitalistic about this." I stared at her. "Capitalistic? I'm being capitalistic for buying a home." "You're just rubbing it in my face," she whimpered, her lip trembling. "You know I've been struggling with my art and you go and do this. You're trying to make me feel small. Mom, Dad, she's trying to make me feel small." "We know, sweetie. It's okay," my mother cooed, rushing over to hug her. My father just looked at me, his gaze unyielding. "This is your last chance to be reasonable, Alexandra. Do the right thing, sign the papers, or we'll be forced to take legal action." I laughed. It was a dry, incredulous, painful sound. "Legal action? On what grounds? On what planet do you H? Ave a claim to my property?" My father, the senior partner, the man who knew the law, just smiled. It was a thin, terrifying smile. "We believe we have a very strong case for constructive trust and unjust enrichment. We'll argue that your entire education and a significant portion of your upbringing were funded with the implicit agreement that you would support this family. Your purchase of this condo, without consulting us, is a breach of that familial contract. You've been unjustly enriched at Clara's expense." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was absurd. It was madness. But he said it with such confidence. He, an accountant, was threatening me with legal terms he'd clearly looked up. "You're insane," I whispered. "You're all insane." I turned and walked out the door. As I drove back to my tiny studio, one thought kept circling in my head. They were really going to do it. They were going to try and sue me. My own parents. They thought they knew everything. They thought they held all the cards, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten what I really did for a living. I wasn't just a financial analyst. My specialty was forensic accounting, and I knew, with sickening certainty, exactly where to look. The letter arrived a week later. It wasn't a text or a phone call. It was a formal, terrifyingly official-looking envelope delivered by a courier. It was a letter of demand from a law firm I'd never heard of. My hands shook as I read the legal jargon. It was exactly what my father had threatened. The letter alleged that I had exploited my family's resources for my own gain. It claimed that my parents had provided me with significant financial support for my education and living expenses, creating a constructive trust with the expectation that I would, in turn, provide for my sister, Clara. My purchase of the condo was, in their lawyer's words, a misappropriation of family-designated assets and an act of unjust enrichment. They were demanding that I either add Clara's name to the deed within 30 days or face a lawsuit that would seek to force the sale of the condo, with the proceeds to be equitably distributed. I had to sit down. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I felt nauseous. I looked around my studio. Every single thing in it, from my second-hand sofa to my refurbished laptop, I had paid for myself. I worked 3 jobs. I was a waitress, a library proctor, and I tutored freshmen in calculus. I took out student loans, which I was still paying off, specifically so I wouldn't have to ask them for a dime. I lived on instant noodles and free campus coffee. The idea that I had been unjustly enriched was so grotesquely false it felt like a violation. The real unjust enrichment was Clara. She was the epicenter of our family's dysfunction. My entire childhood was a timeline of her needs eclipsing everyone else's. When I was 10, I won the state spelling bee. My parents didn't come because Clara had a headache and needed them to stay home and watch a movie with her. When I graduated from college, summa cum laude, my celebration dinner was cut short because Clara announced she was breaking up with her boyfriend and couldn't be around my smug energy. My mother, Meredith, was the chief enabler. Her entire identity was wrapped up in being Clara's protector. Her unsuccessful Etsy shop was just something to fill the time. Her real job was managing Clara's emotions. She saw me not as a daughter, but as a resource, a stable, functioning utility that could be tapped to support the real child, the sensitive one. My strength wasn't a quality to be proud of, it was an obligation. But my father, Richard, was the true antagonist. He was the one with the power. As a senior partner at a major accounting firm, he wielded money and authority like weapons. He was a man obsessed with appearances. He needed the world to see him as a benevolent patriarch, a successful man with a perfect family. Clara's failure to launch was a stain on that image. My success, in his twisted view, only highlighted her failure, making him look bad. His solution wasn't to help Clara grow up, it was to drag me down. By forcing me to share my condo, he wasn't just placating Clara, he was restoring balance to his perfect family portrait. He was leveling the playing field in the most toxic way possible. And now, he was using his knowledge of the financial world to try and destroy mine. The lawsuit was a lie, but it was a calculated lie. He knew that a legal battle, even a frivolous one, would be devastating for me. I was a 26-year-old analyst. My entire career was built on integrity and financial probity. A lawsuit alleging misappropriation and unjust enrichment could get me fired. It would be a permanent black mark on my record. He wasn't just trying to steal my condo. He was trying to break my entire life. He was using my greatest strength, my financial independence, and turning it into a weapon against me. He knew I didn't have the resources to fight a protracted legal battle against a man with his connections. He was counting on me to fold, to give in, to protect the career I had worked so hard to build. I read the letter again, the sheer audacity of it. The cold, corporate cruelty of my father's strategy. He hadn't even called. He'd sent a lawyer. It was in that moment that the grief and the shock finally burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard rage. He thought he was the only financial expert in the family. He thought I was just a kid playing with numbers. He thought I would be scared. He was wrong. They had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that while he was busy teaching Clara how to be a victim, I was teaching myself how to be a hunter. And I knew all about his secrets. The turning point wasn't a moment of courage. It was a moment of cold, pragmatic calculation. They had declared war. I had to stop being a daughter and start being an analyst. My first call was to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the best, most ruthless civil litigator I could find, a woman named Ms. Evans, whose reputation for dismantling frivolous lawsuits was legendary. I used my entire new furniture fund as her retainer. When I explained the situation, her response was a dry, "Well, this is certainly novel, and by novel, I mean an astonishing act of bad faith." She confirmed my fears. "They can't win, Alexandra, but they can cost you a lot. They'll file motions, demand discovery, drag this out. They're counting on you to bleed out financially before you ever see a courtroom. Our job is to find leverage, something so big, so definitive, that it makes this lawsuit disappear overnight." "I think I have it," I said, my voice quiet, "but I need to be sure." This is where my clever trap came in. It wasn't a physical trap, it was a digital one. It was a discrepancy I had noticed years ago, a loose thread I never, ever pulled. My father, Richard, the senior partner, the man of unimpeachable integrity, was a creature of habit. And one of his habits was creative accounting. Not at his firm, he was too smart for that. At home. Years ago, when I was in college learning about forensic accounting, I'd offered to help him digitize his old paper files for his personal taxes. He'd laughed and called me his little number cruncher. He gave me boxes of files, thinking I was just doing data entry. But I wasn't. I was analyzing. And I found it, a separate savings account, a slush fund he called the Clara Cares Fund. It was an account he and my mother had been funding for years, siphoning money from their main accounts. But it wasn't the existence of the fund that was the problem. It was the source of the money. My father managed our elderly aunt's estate, his own sister, Aunt Lydia, who was in a long-term care facility with dementia. He was her fiduciary, her power of attorney, and I saw the transfers. Small, regular, seemingly innocuous amounts moving from Aunt Lydia's trust account into the Clara Cares Fund. A management fee here, a reimbursement there. It was methodical. It was hidden. And it was highly, highly illegal. It was felony, elder financial abuse. He thought he had hidden it perfectly, but I was the one who built the spreadsheet. I had seen the account numbers. I had memorized them. I never said a word. I told myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But now, seeing what he was capable of, I knew it wasn't. Now I had to prove it. I couldn't access his personal bank records, but I was a forensic analyst. I didn't need to, I just needed to show the pattern. The leverage wasn't just the M. One, it was the crime. I spent the next 2 weeks working my normal 12-hour days, and then coming home to my tiny studio and working another 8. I cross-referenced dates, amounts, and public records. I pulled the property records for my aunt's house, which he had sold to pay for her care. I found the sale price. Then I looked at the listed expenses for her care facility. The numbers didn't add up. There was a massive surplus, a surplus that had vanished. I compiled my findings into a secure file. A spreadsheet, a timeline, a summary of transfers. It was a precise, professional, and utterly devastating audit of my father's personal finances. Then I went for the final piece. I contacted a private investigator, a contact Ms. Evans gave me to do a wellness check on my Aunt Lydia. I needed to know her current state, and I needed to know what my father's official, fiduciary, reports looked like. The PICE report came back a week later, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Aunt Lydia was in a clean but basic, state-funded facility. The high-end private care home my father claimed she was in, she'd been moved out over a year ago. He had downgraded her care, pocketed the difference, and was letting her live out her final days on the taxpayer's dime while he funded my sister's artistic lifestyle and sued me for my own hard-earned money. The man who was accusing me of unjust enrichment was actively embezzling from his own vulnerable, ailing sister. My trap was set. It was no longer about my condo. It was about justice for Aunt Lydia. And it was about showing my father, the senior partner, what a real analyst could do. My lawyer, Ms. Evans, sent a formal reply to my parents' law firm. It was a masterpiece of legal restraint. It simply stated that their claims were categorically false, without merit, and appeared to be an act of malicious familial harassment. It rejected their demand in full and stated that any attempt to file a lawsuit would be met with a vigorous and robust defense, including a countersuit for all legal fees and damages. I knew this wouldn't be enough. My father operated on a principle of escalation. He would see this as a bluff. I needed to show him my hand, but I had to do it on my own terms. My parents, predictably, demanded a family mediation. Their lawyer sent the request to Ms. Evans, who advised against it. "It's a trap, Alexandra. They want to get you in a room and bully you." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm going. But it won't be a mediation, it'll be a presentation." We met at the law firm that represented my parents. The conference room was cold and opulent, all dark wood and leather chairs. My parents, Richard and Meredith, sat on one side of the massive table, looking like a united, aggrieved front. Clara sat between them, her phone in her lap, looking profoundly bored. Their lawyer, a slick man named Harrison, sat at the head. I walked in alone, carrying nothing but my laptop. Ms. Evans was on standby, but I had to do this myself. "Alexandra, thank you for coming," Harrison began, shuffling papers. "We're here to find an amicable solution. My clients are deeply hurt by your selfish actions, but they are prepared to be gracious." "I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice perfectly calm. I placed my laptop on the table and opened it. "We're not here to discuss my condo. We're here to discuss account number 4771B, the Clara Cares Fund." My mother and Clara looked confused. My father's blood drained from his face. He didn't just go pale, he went a sickly, chalky gray. His eyes locked on mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw pure, unadulterated panic. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, a pathetic attempt at a bluff. "Don't you?" I turned my laptop screen so they could all see. On it was the spreadsheet, my masterpiece. "Let's review. This is a private fund you and Mom have been contributing to since 2018. Very responsible. The problem," I said, clicking to a new tab, "is the source of the contributions." I brought up the timeline. On June 1st, 2019, you sold Aunt Lydia's primary residence. Here's the closing statement. A net profit of $850,000. On June 3rd, $150,000 was transferred from her trust into the Clara Cares Fund and coded as a fiduciary management fee. A 17% fee, Dad? That's a little steep, isn't it? Alexandra, this is private family business, my father hissed, trying to regain control. You have no right. I have every right, I snapped, and my voice, echoing in the quiet room, made him flinch. You made this my business when you sued me. You accused me of unjust enrichment. Let's talk about unjust enrichment. I clicked to the next slide. It was a side-by-side comparison. On one side, the monthly invoices from the actual state-run facility where Aunt Lydia was living, $4,200 a month. On the other side, the bank filed fiduciary reports he had been submitting, claiming he was paying for a private luxury suite at a different facility, $14,000 a month. Where is that $9,800 a month difference going, Dad? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I know where it was going. It paid for Clara's downtown loft for 2 years. It paid for her BMW. It's paying for Mr. Harrison. You are suing me with stolen money. My mother looked horrified. Richard, what is she talking about? That's Lydia's money. That's for her care. She's lying, Meredith, my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. She's faked these documents. This is slander. This is libel. Clara finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide. Dad, you told me Aunt Lydia's money was all gone. You told me she was fine. She is fine, he insisted. Is she? I said. I clicked to the final tab. It was the PICE report, complete with dated photographs. Photos of a small, sterile room. Photos of Aunt Lydia, looking thin and confused in a standard-issue gown. This is where your sister is living, Dad, I said, while your daughter is at the spa, while you're in this $500 an hour room trying to steal my home. My mother let out a strangled sob and covered her mouth. Even Clara looked sick. My father's lawyer, Harrison, was frantically trying to shut me down. This meeting is over. This is inadmissible. You're threatening my client. I'm not threatening anyone, I said, closing my laptop. I'm just presenting the facts. You, Mr. Harrison, are now officially on notice that your client is using funds obtained through felony financial elder abuse to pay your retainer. I'd check that check, if I were you. I stood up and looked at my father. His mask of authority was gone. He was just a terrified, guilty man, exposed. Drop the lawsuit, I said, my voice like ice. Drop it today. You will never, ever contact me about my condo again, and you will move Aunt Lydia back to her original care home. You will pay back every single cent you stole from her, if I see so much as a shadow of this lawsuit. This entire file goes to the district attorney, the IRS, and the state accountancy board. Am I clear? My father just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. Am I clear? He finally, weakly, nodded. I walked out of the conference room, my head held high, leaving the ruins of my family behind me. I thought that would be the end of it. I truly did. I expected a groveling apology, a terrified retreat. What I got instead was a chilling display of just how deep the delusion ran. The lawsuit was dropped. Ms. Evans confirmed it within 24 hours, but the war wasn't over, it just shifted. My father, Richard, went into damage control mode. He couldn't fight me on the facts, so he tried to destroy my reputation. He began a quiet, insidious smear campaign. I was unstable. I was erratic. I had blackmailed my own family. He was a senior partner. His whispers carried weight. I heard from a colleague that my father had casually mentioned to a mutual acquaintance at a charity dinner that he was deeply worried about Alexandra's mental state. This was his new angle. I wasn't an analyst who had uncovered a crime. I was a hysterical daughter who had invented a fantasy. But the most desperate and frankly pathetic attempts came from my mother and sister. My mother, Meredith, started leaving me long, tearful voicemails. It was a fire hose of emotional guilt. "How could you do this to your father?" she'd weep into the phone. "He made a mistake. He was just trying to provide for his family. For Clara. And you turn on him like a snake, after all we's done for you. Aunt Lydia is fine, she doesn't even know where she is. But you've broken your father's heart. You've broken this family." Clara, on the other hand, went on the attack. Her artistic struggles were suddenly front and center. She posted a series of vague, passive-aggressive rants on her social media, painting herself as the victim of a callous, materialistic family member who had betrayed them all for a pile of bricks. "Some people value money over family," one post read, over a picture of her looking thoughtfully at a canvas. "So sad to see someone lose their soul." They were trying to regain control of the narrative, to paint me as the villain. But they still didn't understand. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building a case. My confrontation at the law office was just the first step. The trap wasn't just the file, it was what I did with it next. "So, they've dropped the suit," Ms. Evans said over the phone. "But you're not satisfied, are you?" "He's slandering me, and he hasn't moved Aunt Lydia," I said, my voice cold. I had checked. She was still in the state-run facility. "He thinks I'll just be happy the lawsuit is gone. He thinks I'll let the rest of it go. He's wrong." "What's your next move, Alexandra?" "I'm giving the file to the authorities," I said. "But not just the DA, that's too slow. I'm going to the people who can stop him now." I had already done my research. I wasn't just a daughter, I was a forensic accountant with a grievance. I knew exactly which levers to pull. I compiled my entire file. The spreadsheets, the bank transfers, the PICE photos, the timeline of the lawsuit, into a secure, encrypted digital package. My first call was to Adult Protective Services. I filed a formal, detailed report of financial elder abuse, complete with all my evidence. I wasn't anonymous. I put my name, my profession, and my contact information on it. I wanted them to know I was a credible witness. My second call was to the state's Professional Board of Accountancy. I filed a formal ethics complaint against Richard, senior partner, alleging gross fiduciary misconduct, embezzlement, and acts of moral turpitude. For an accountant, an ethics complaint like this is a death sentence. It triggers an immediate, invasive audit of their professional and personal life. My final move was the most difficult. I had to face my family one last time. I needed to see my mother and sister and give them a final chance to separate themselves from my father's crimes. I went to their house. My father wasn't home, I'd timed it. My mother and Clara were in the living room. When my mother saw me, she immediately stood up. "Alexandra, thank God, your father is a wreck. You need to apologize." "I'm not here to apologize, Mom. I'm here to give you some advice," I said. I placed 2 letters on the coffee table. "That's a copy of the report I filed with Adult Protective Services, and that's a copy of the ethics complaint I filed against Dad with the state board." Meredith's face went white. You didn't." "I did. It's done. An investigation is being opened. They will be freezing Aunt Lydia's trust account, and they will be auditing all of Dad's personal finances for the last 10 years. Clara finally spoke, her voice shaking with real fear. "What does that mean? What's going to happen?" "It means," I said, looking directly at her, "that the Clara Cares Fund is about to be seized as evidence. It means Dad is very likely going to lose his license. It means he may face criminal charges. It means the money is gone, all of it." You monster," my mother whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "He's your father." "And Aunt Lydia is his sister," I countered. "And I am his daughter, who he tried to ruin because I wouldn't let him steal from me. He did this, not me." I looked at my mother, my heart aching with a decade's worth of disappointment. "He's going to lose everything, Mom, and he is going to try and drag you down with him. You need to get a lawyer. You need to protect yourself." I turned to Clara. "And you need to get a job, for real this time." Clara just stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. The spell was broken. The bank of mom and dad, the endless, magical source of funding for her artistic life, was gone. Her protector, her enabler, was about to be exposed to the world as a common thief. You'll regret this, Alexandra," my mother shouted as I walked to the door. "You'll be all alone." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "I've been alone for years, Mom. I'm just no paying for the privilege anymore." The downfall was faster and more spectacular than I could have imagined. The state accountancy board moved with terrifying speed. An ethics violation involving a senior partner and potential elder abuse was a 5-alarm fire for their reputation. My father was suspended from his firm within a week, pending the results of their internal investigation. The firm, desperate to distance itself from the scandal, issued a public statement about a partner being on leave for personal reasons and their full cooperation with all state inquiries. His name, his photo, everything was scrubbed from their website overnight. The climax wasn't a shouting match. It was a sterile, fluorescent-lit meeting at the Adult Protective Services office, a meeting I had been summoned to as the primary witness. I walked in and I saw them. My father, Richard, looking 20 years older. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face was ashen, and he wasn't sitting with his family. He was sitting with his criminal defense attorney. On the other side of the room sat my mother, Meredith, and my sister, Clara. They weren't there for him. They were there with their own lawyer. My mother, it seemed, had finally taken my advice. A social worker, Ms. Diaz, and an investigator from the state board, a stern man named Mr. Klein, sat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Klein began, his voice flat. "We are here to discuss the fiduciary account of Ms. Lydia. Mr. Richard, our investigation, prompted by the complaint filed by your daughter, Ms. Alexandra, has found significant and disturbing irregularities." He didn't hold back. He systematically, line by line, detailed my father's embezzlement. He laid out the timeline of the house sale, the fraudulent fees, the systematic siphoning of funds. He had my spreadsheets, now verified with official bank subpoenas. It was my file, brought to life with the full power of the state. "In total," Mr. Klein said, "we have verified the misappropriation of $432,000 from Ms. Lydia's trust over a 4-year period." My mother let out a small, horrified gasp. She had known about the fund, but she'd clearly had no idea of the scale. My father's lawyer immediately jumped in. My client admits to poor bookkeeping. He was under immense family stress. He always intended to pay the money back. This is a family dispute, not a criminal matter." Ms. Diaz from APS finally spoke, her voice filled with a quiet, righteous anger. "Mr. Richard, this is not a bookkeeping error. This is felony elder abuse. While you were borrowing this money, your sister was moved from a high-quality care facility to a state-funded ward. Her quality of life was severely diminished. Her personal trust, meant for her care, was used to fund. Let's see." She looked at a paper. "A BMW 3 Series, 2 years of rent on a luxury apartment, and a lawsuit against your other daughter." She looked directly at my mother and Clara. "And as for you, Ms. Meredith and Ms. Clara, you were the direct beneficiaries of these stolen funds. You were living on money that should have been paying for an elderly woman's medical care." Clara finally cracked. It wasn't a performance. It was a raw, ugly sob of pure panic. "I didn't know," she wailed. "He told me it was an inheritance. I didn't know it was stolen. I didn't know." My mother was just staring at my father, her expression one of utter, bottomless betrayal. The man she had enabled, the man she had defended, had lied to her too. He had exposed her and their sensitive daughter to legal and financial ruin. "Mr. Richard," Mr. Klein said, "the board is moving for a summary revocation of your CPA license. Permanently. And we are turning our entire file over to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for criminal prosecution." That was the moment. My father, the big-shot senior partner, the man who had threatened me in my own home, completely broke. He slumped forward, put his head in his hands, and his shoulders began to shake. He was a ruined man. I stood up. I had seen enough. "Ms. Diaz, Mr. Klein," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "Thank you for your work. I have one more thing to add." I placed a final folder on the table. My father's lawsuit against me caused significant professional and emotional distress. This is the bill from my attorney, Ms. Evans, for $22,000. This is the bill from the private investigator for $4,500. As the provable source of his lawsuit's funding was my Aunt Lydia's stolen money, I expect to be reimbursed in full. From him, not the trust. I looked at my father one last time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Goodbye, Dad." I walked out of that office, past my sobbing sister and my stunned mother, and stepped out into the bright sunshine. I took a deep breath. I felt light, the fever I'd had for months, the anxiety and the anger, As finally gone, I was free. The aftermath was swift. My father, facing overwhelming evidence, pleaded guilty to one count of felony financial elder abuse. He avoided jail time due to his age and lack of a prior record, but the price was steep. He lost his license, his career, and was sentenced to 5 years of probation and 1,000 hours of community service. The court ordered him to pay full restitution. The Clara Cares Fund was seized. He and my mother had to sell their house, the house I grew up in, to pay back the $432,000 to Aunt Lydia's trust and to pay my legal bills. Using my own professional network, I worked with Ms. Evans and APS to have a neutral third-party fiduciary appointed for Aunt Lydia. I used my knowledge of the system to ensure she was immediately moved back to the best private care facility in the state, her comfort and safety secured for the rest of her life, all paid for by the recovered funds. My mother and father moved into a small, bleak rental apartment across town. My mother's Etsy shop was now her primary source of income, and it wasn't enough. She had to get a real job as a cashier at a grocery store. Clara's downfall was the most public. With the money gone, she was evicted from her new apartment. The BMW was repossessed. She, too, had to get a job. She now works as a barista at a coffee shop. Her social media is silent. The sensitive artist had finally been forced to confront the real world, and she had no one to blame but the parents who had failed her by never saying no. About 6 months after the sentencing, I was in my new condo. It was finally furnished. Sunlight streamed through the big windows, landing on my comfortable sofa and the bookshelves I had built myself. I was drinking coffee, reading the weekend paper, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara. "Can we talk?" My first instinct was to delete it, but I paused. I typed back, "Okay." We met at a public park, halfway between my condo and her new, much smaller apartment. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. I wanted to apologize," she said, twisting her hands in her lap. "I didn't know, Alex, I swear I didn't know where the money came from, but I should have asked. It was just so easy to just take it, to just let them hate you for me." She was crying, real tears this time. "You were right, I was a failure, I was. And instead of fixing it, I just let them punish you for not being one too. I'm so sorry." It was the first truly honest thing she had ever said to me. I didn't know if our relationship could ever be what it was, but I knew it could be something. Something new, something real. "I know, Clara," I said. "I know it's okay." We sat in silence for a while. "I've been painting again," she said quietly. "Just, for me this time, on cheap canvases. I paid for them myself, with my barista money." I smiled, a small, real smile. "I'd like to see them sometime." She looked up, her eyes wide. "Really?" "Really?" My mother never apologized. She's too proud, too buried in her own resentment. My father I haven't spoken to since the hearing, and I don't think I ever will. Some betrayals cut too deep. But as I walked back to my condo, my home, bought with my work, defended with my skills, I felt at peace. I had lost the family I thought I had, but I had gained myself. I'd proven that my work, my integrity, and my resilience were not weaknesses to be exploited. They were my armor. And I was, for the first time in my entire life, truly, justly, and completely enriched.